Hey everyone, welcome to today's video where we are talking about how to immerse yourself in Japanese in the most effective way. A few years back, I shifted gears in my Japanese learning approach, focusing more on language acquisition. I knew that I needed to immerse myself more into the language, as everyone kept recommending. But at first, I wasn't quite sure how to go about that, and I had a ton of questions. Which is why I decided to package my learnings from several years of Japanese immersion into a practical beginner's guide in the form of this video today. So today we will go through a bunch of questions that people seem to struggle with when they start out on their own Japanese immersion approach. And if you're new here, hey, my name is Matt, and I self-studied Japanese for the past 9 years. And on this channel, we're exploring strategies and methods to make learning Japanese more effective and more enjoyable. Before we start, a short disclaimer. For this video to make sense, you should already have a general understanding of how language acquisition works and the importance of target language input. If not, just search for Stephen Krashen, language acquisition on YouTube, and then come back here. All right, question 1. Can I even immerse sufficiently in Japanese if I'm not living in Japan? Yes, thanks to a beautiful thing called the internets. Jokes aside, I think it has never been easier to get access to all sorts of Japanese content for immersion. You absolutely don't have to live in Japan to learn the language anymore. There are tons of great sources out there that you can simply Google, and I will share some of them in today's video. Question 2. Can I start Japanese language immersion from absolutely zero? Yeah, you can, but I would suggest to make your life easier by front-loading your efforts with some good old studying of 3 things. Number 1, the writing systems, hiragana and katakana, to unlock some first easy reading material fast, and also to get the most mileage out of watching stuff with Japanese subtitles, which we will come to later. And number 2, the basics of Japanese grammar, to get a general sense of how the language works. And it's enough really to just flip through a few chapters of any Japanese textbook, like for example Genki 1. Just avoid spending too much time on textbook learning really. I made another video about that topic specifically, which I will link up somewhere here, if you're interested. And number 3, doubling down on learning and memorizing common words. And this one is really important, I think. Building an inventory of words that you understand will allow you to comprehend your Japanese input faster, which makes the whole thing more fun. And it opens up more possibilities in terms of input that you can use. Plus, the more words you know, the easier it becomes to figure out new phrases and words. You will be able to make educated guesses based on the familiar words around them. So it's like solving a puzzle where each piece you already know helps you understand the whole picture a bit better. Question 3. Is Anki really necessary for immersion-based learning? Well, it's not necessary, but I would still highly recommend using it. I found it to be the best way for me to learn and remember new words and phrases. And it also helped me in establishing a daily routine of learning and, well, reviewing Japanese, which is super important in learning, well, any foreign language really. Next question. Is learning kanji necessary for Japanese immersion? Well, not necessarily, but I think it can be beneficial. So for example, learning kanji can speed up your reading comprehension and help you to get even more out of Japanese subtitles quite early on. However, this is a quite debated topic in the Japanese learning community, so I'll save the rest for another video. Question 5. Should I focus on listening or reading? In the beginning, absolutely listening. And I would delay any reading practice until you've acquired a certain inventory of words and grammar that you can actually comprehend. I think listening to Japanese will be your go-to method to actually feed your conscious and subconscious language acquisition systems with tons of target language data, which by the way seems to be one of the key components of language acquisition. So depending on your goals, I'd still recommend incorporating reading into your routine eventually. It's just a matter of timing really. What kind of content should I immerse in? Well, the short and honest answer, anything you like / have an interest in. And of course, that is made by native speakers of Japanese. There's absolutely no point in trying to force down any input that you don't find interesting. Your brain will be less effective in identifying and assembling those new language patterns, since, well, you have no genuine interest really to understand what is being said in the first place. Question 7. Is anime a good resource for immersion, or will it make my Japanese sound unnatural? Yep, immersing in anime is absolutely okay. I feel like the concerns about that topic are widely over-exaggerated. Matt vs. Japan is living proof of that, I'd say. He's actually one of the most native-like sounding foreigners that I've ever seen. And in one of his videos, he states that his go-to immersion content was, well, anime. And he actually acknowledges that his Japanese may have been slightly colored anime in the beginning, but apparently he managed to fix that without much effort really. In the end, anime is still Japanese. So if you enjoy the content, go ahead. Just one rule, no subtitles, unless it's Japanese. English subtitles will pretty much kill off any chance for language acquisition to happen, simply because there is no need for your brain to engage in decoding the language because, well, the meaning is right there in front of you in the form of the subtitles. Next question, what is the right difficulty level of input? Tough question really, and there are quite different opinions on that. If you ask me, I think the best material is the one that is quite a bit outside of your comfort zone, but not as far out there that you basically don't understand what's going on at all. If you constantly try to immerse in content that is way above your current level, chances are that you will get frustrated and bored quite quickly. Just try not to stress about this too much really. It's very easy to lose yourself in trying hard to find content that perfectly fits your current level and spend tons of time on that. And well, that's a moving target anyway, because your ability to comprehend will improve over time. And the internet is really full of good content, but I will add a few recommendations in the description below. All right, next question. What if I'm really a beginner and don't understand anything, not even the easy stuff? Well, see question 1. Do more front loading of basic grammar and words, but don't stop the immersion. I know that this can be quite frustrating and you may wonder, what the hell am I even doing? This approach is not working for me. But I can just assure you, trust in the process and you will see that things will become easier over time. Question 10. Can I look up words and grammar that I don't understand? Yes, you can and you absolutely should. But there's one mistake that I see people doing again and again and again, and that is overdoing it. What I try to do is working with 2 different types of immersion sessions. One type is focused more on extending my knowledge of grammar and new words as much as possible. So I would stop watching or listening quite often to look up new words and grammar and add them to Anki. And the other type is more focused on getting in as much exposure to Japanese input as possible. So I almost never pause, even if I don't comprehend things, which sometimes is not easy, I will admit, but I think it's important if you want to get in the reps. 11. How much do I need to immerse? Well, simple answer, as much as possible, but only as much as you feel comfortable with or your context allows. If you're a student, chances are that you have more time on your hands compared to someone working a full-time job with a wife, kids, dog, maybe a house to take care of. And if you look around, you'll find different statements by language learners on how much time they really spend on immersing. And it ranges between 1 to 2 hours per day, up to, well, sort of ridiculous amounts of up to 12 hours or whatever per day. The one thing that people largely seem to agree on, and I do as well, is the benefit of daily immersion, instead of trying to max out your Saturday and Sunday while not getting any input from Monday until Friday. Okay, next one. But I have very little time, so immersion is not for me. Well, let's be honest, learning Japanese does take effort, but even if you're busy, you can still use immersion effectively, I think. The key is being smart about when and how you immerse. Enter semi-active or passive listening. In a nutshell, this means that you combine listening to Japanese with doing other things at the same time. So for instance, pop on a Japanese podcast while driving your car, or you mow the lawn, or cleaning the house. It's not as effective as giving it your full attention, but it's way better than nothing really. Plus, you don't need to carve out extra time in your day. And I've got a pretty hectic life myself. And this approach has been an absolute game changer in speeding up my learning. If you're super pressed for time, check out the video I've linked above. It's packed with practical tips on boosting your Japanese skills without burning yourself out. All right, next question. How fast will I make progress? How long until I see results? Yeah, that really depends on too many factors really to give any meaningful answer now. But I can just say that for me, switching to a more immersion-based approach has been super effective, and I wish I'd done it earlier. But chances are that if this question is your biggest concern right now, you're worrying about the wrong thing really. You should ask yourself why you want to learn the language in the first place, and then find ways to make the process of getting there more enjoyable. Number 14. Understood the input part, but how do I learn to speak by just listening and reading? Well, to put it simply, by starting to speak at some point. Some people say that language output should be delayed, so you can acquire as much as possible of the target language via input-based immersion upfront to not build any bad habits. But if you ask me, I believe that speaking from day one obviously doesn't make much sense because, well, there's not much you can say really. But if you really like the idea of talking with Japanese natives, I also don't see a reason to artificially delay it. Either way, to ease you into speaking, I would recommend shadowing any easy Japanese that you're listening to in order to get used to it. And at some some point, switch into paid one-to-one online conversation practice on platforms such as italki. And the nice thing about those platforms is that they take some of the pressure out of the equation. You don't really have to worry about being an interesting or a good conversation partner because, well, you paid the person to have a conversation with you in the first place. And if you're still not sold on the idea of learning Japanese through language immersion, and you find it hard to drop your textbooks, you should watch this video up here next. And in there, I talk about why an immersion-based language acquisition approach I think is actually more effective than traditional textbook-based learning. And I also talk about how to combine the two for the best results. And if I missed out on any question that you still have, feel free to put it in the comments and I will answer you to the best of my knowledge. But for now, thank you and see you in the next one. Bye.